Maggie's is a safe haven for people undergoing treatment for cancer, while also a place supportive loved ones can go for a moment of calm. It's an alternative to the often uncomfortable and clinical hospital environment. I sat down with two members of the Guernsey Friends of Maggie's fundraising committee, Alison and its chair, Peter Walsh, to hear firsthand how the centre supports those who need it most. Thank you very much for being here today. So first off, I just thought it'd be good to get you to introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about yourself and how you're involved in Maggie's. You can jump in whenever you want.
I'm Peter Walsh, and I'm chair of Maggie's. Maggie's Guernsey, that is, basically, but obviously have a very close connection with Maggie's in Southampton as well, where we have a lot of interchange going on. My background was in the banking, the finance industry, but I got persuaded, it didn't take much, 5 years ago basically, to get involved on the particular project. So, and it's something that my wife thinks Maggie's is the other girl basically.
Keeps you busy.
Yeah, very busy, but very rewarding. So.
And yourself?
And I'm Alison Good, and I had never heard of Maggie's up until 2 years ago. And by total coincidence, I went to the chiropodist. My husband was very ill with cancer. I went to the chiropodist and saw an orange Maggie's leaflet, picked it up, Maggie's Southampton. Didn't really take much in, to be honest. And then when I was at the hospital all day, every day, one of the senior nurses suggested I take a break and mention Maggie's. And I sort of went ding. And it was in the car park, one of the areas of the car park of Southampton General Hospital. The service was invaluable throughout the whole of the next year, really.
And so, for people who don't know, what kind of services, before we go into the Guernsey side of things and raising money and how this kind of works over here, and what is the service that's being provided to people?
Well, it's a support service, basically. I mean, obviously, we don't have anything to do with the clinical side of it at all. Well, I certainly don't, anyhow. That's not the knowledge that we have. But it is referrals to people who really, at a time when they're struggling with what's going on, not just the patient, it's the family around them as well, as Ali will attest to only too well. It's a beautiful centre. It's very informal, and it's very well designed. Although it's very very close to the hospital itself in the oncology unit in Southampton, but the actual building itself is separate, and it's just stunning the way they've been designed, and there are a lot of these centres up and down the country. But it's just a place that it's just peaceful. Before COVID, in any event, there are no protocols at all. As it says, just pop in or call in when. Sorry,
that's okay.
And you'll get the sort of, and if you want to go into a nice quiet corner somewhere. You can do that. Nobody will bother you at all, basically. But on the other hand, if you would like to talk to somebody, and gradually, it's all around the kitchen table, basically, where you get a cup of coffee. And even when I went to, the very first time I went was to one in London, basically, Charing Cross. And it was just the same. I pitched up there for a meeting, and they just didn't even ask me my name. Come in, would you like a cup of coffee? I actually needed the loo, but and that was available as well.
Because I spoke to Doran, your son, because we know each other all quite well, and he ran. Did he run a marathon? Didn't he? The London Marathon to raise money, and so he spoke about it very highly. I just wanted to hear from you how your family utilised the space while you were there.
Well, the best thing about it, as Peter says, it's not clinical. They do have a Macmillan's in the hospital, and they provide a really good service as well, but it smells like the hospital, and it's the hospital chairs. But every Maggie centre is different, isn't it, Peter? But this, because they've all been designed by architects that have given their services. This particular one is Scandi, that's how I describe it. Very
it looks
clean
that
lines,
way.
Very, very comfortable. And there's a main area, as Peter says, with the kitchen, and you can go in and use the kitchen, take your own food or whatever. But there's little ante-rooms off it, and they do relaxation classes and yoga classes and all sorts of things. But also, I was fortunate that I wasn't in this position, but if you need financial help, they'll point you in the right direction. They helped me find accommodation because it was very quickly evident that I wasn't just going to be there for a weekend. I was going to be there for the long term. So they helped me find that. They help you in all manner of ways, really. And as Peter says, if you want to talk to somebody, that's fine. They've got professional psychologists as well, and there's cancer specialist trained psychologists, so they very much know what they're talking about. But if you don't want to talk to anybody, that's fine too. And one particular experience that stands out in my mind, probably the most, is I'd been going in for a few months and I was emotionally exhausted. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept. And I walked in, one of the guys that worked there, because there are volunteers, but there are also specialist cancer nurses that work there, that are paid to work there. He just sort of beckoned me, took me in a room, put a blanket on me and said, sleep for a few hours. But
That's
he just
amazing.
knew I didn't say anything. He just knew what I needed.
So it's not just the building, it's the people as well.
It's the people.
Fantastic team.
Yeah.
And so for a bit of context, if you don't mind, could you tell us why your family was there and how
Sure.
that panned out?
Yeah, because Mike was diagnosed with a very complex form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma early November 2021. And it took a long time to actually get the correct diagnosis, but his treatment was prolonged. He had a lot of complicated chemotherapy and then eventually had radiotherapy every day for a month because it went to his brain and his spinal cord. So he used it when he was an outpatient and when he was going for chemotherapy every day.
Yeah.
He could come in and use it, and it was great. Everybody understood. In fact, the lady in charge, Dr. Julie, I've forgotten her name. Julie
Howard-Jones.
Julie Howard-Jones.
Julie,
that's
we
it.
call her.
Yeah, we call her Julie. I didn't even know she was a doctor.
See,
till
that's
I left.
first name basis. I mean, that's part of it, I
didn't even
suppose.
know
Yeah.
she was
She's
a
the
doctor.
centre head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's the
the
centre
boss.
head. But in her prior life, she was a lymphoma cancer nurse, specialist nurse. So she knew exactly what he was going through, and she could explain to him why they were doing what they were doing, what he was hoping to achieve. So it was just the best thing for us. It really was. Yeah.
Because that world can seem quite scary. You
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
hospitals smelling like a
Yeah.
hospital. You
Yeah.
can talk about people saying things that perhaps you don't understand. If you're at I guess the point is to have a place where people understand what you're going
Yeah,
through.
exactly. Yeah. And we were in the haematology ward and the oncology ward, and they're very intense
Yeah,
places.
I can imagine.
You know, you're not going in because you've got a broken leg. It is a very an intense situation. So, yeah, it was a haven. That's in it, and that's what my children said as well. Because 2 were here, as you know.
Yeah.
2 from London, so they would come over on a regular basis, and they all said exactly the same thing. They'd walk into Maggie's and the shoulders just went after being so. You know, it was a peaceful haven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said, Peter, you said there's multiple places across the UK.
Yes, the first. I mean, going back to the point you've just been talking about, Maggie herself, who was the founder of the whole thing, basically, she got cancer of breast in I think it was 88 or something like that, and it went into remission, and then 5 years later, she got a very bad diagnosis that it was still treatable but not curable, basically, and she was then left outside in the corridor, the hospital corridor, basically, with her husband, trying to think about all of this and what it meant for the family and everything else. And she determined around that point that she wanted to find a building or to have somewhere that some people like herself could go and be in a different, again, talking about, you know, the hospitals have to be what they are, basically. They've got the job to do. And we work very closely with them, and it's a collaboration with all the hospitals. They're all NHS, and as of now, there are somewhere between. Southampton was the 27th.
Wow.
And there's 2 or 3 more of them that are being built or in planning at the moment, and there are 3 overseas as well. There's one in Hong Kong, Japan, and Barcelona.
That's incredible.
So it's big. It's a big entity, and Maggie, unfortunately herself, she died in '95, and the very first one was '96 in Edinburgh.
That's incredible.
But her nurse, Dame Laura Lee, was a specialist nurse, and she was the one who was taking care of Maggie, and she took over the mantle, basically, and she's now the CEO of the whole of Maggie's, basically, up in Scotland. The headquarters are in Edinburgh. And in addition to that, of course, we have royalty. Of Queen Camilla,
Yeah.
who was obviously not at the time, but is our president, basically.
Okay.
And we got some very good news recently that will continue despite her sort of new position.
New place.
So
She's busier now.
I met her up there on an opening, and it was fantastic. I mean, she's a very, very down-to-earth individual, and made everybody feel, and made sure she spoke to everybody who was there. So it's just a very, very nice environment. All I can say is, because it's what happened to me, is if you get the opportunity to visit a centre, and you can walk in, if you're in Southampton or you're in London, or you want, and we can always ahead of time say to Jilly or to whoever else it is, look, somebody is coming up, they're just coming to have a look. They'll be delighted to see you, basically. And then you just, it's difficult to explain. You know, Ali's obviously been there for all the right reasons and why it was designed. I've been several times, but that's all to do with the charity and all the rest of it. Thankfully, I had a little run-in, but nothing that serious. So it's just the atmosphere of the place. So, and every single Guernsey person that's gone over and come back, and we've managed, you know, we know about it, and there's obviously we've got to be very, very careful about not disclosing details that names and things aren't talked about, but there are statistics and things. But all of them, and some of them who've come and talked to us as well, they've all had nothing but praise for the place. The only thing they've criticised is finding it. And I think we've done, and that's a bit more down to the hospital, because we were literally 3 minutes away from the oncology unit. But
it's right next to radiotherapy.
But Southampton Hospital, if you've
so
ever been there,
it's
is enormous.
Well, we spent some time up there for my partner's. Her niece was a premature baby, so we spent a lot of time in Aggie's. Aggie's Borough. So we got to know that the hospital is gigantic. I mean, it's ridiculously big.
Centre in it,
And it can be a very imposing place for people. So having these kind of places is amazing. So you're clearly very passionate about advocating for Maggie's now.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's the story with you and the involvement with Friends of Maggie's now?
I don't know how I got to know about you when I got back.
Well, funny enough, you mentioned it already, because the leaflets and the chap, what's his name, the foot chap, John Liu. And I go to him to have my feet sorted out, basically, every now and again. And I'd asked him, could I put some literature in the lobby, basically. And at the time, we had COVID, of course. And so the doctors, surgeries, etc., weren't allowing literature for obvious reasons. That obviously got to a point where they were happy to have it, and I'd left half a dozen leaflets in there, and one of them was that Ali had picked up. We'd never met before then, basically.
Okay.
And that happens all the time. I bump into people who are now very kind, and they help with donations, small donations and things, as well as obviously some of the larger ones, because we've been very well helped by the Guernsey Community Foundation, as one of our major contributors, and the Social Investment Fund more recently, and Butterfield Bank. I was chair at Butterfield Bank, non-exec chair there for quite a number of years, and so got to know them quite well, obviously, and they've made us the Charity of the Year on a couple of occasions, and we use their offices and everything else, which is extremely helpful. But of course, we do rely. There's no government funding.
No, it's a charity.
It's a total charity, yes, and we are a registered charity. We had to be in the end, because we had a great difficulty persuading people that because the facility itself is off island, in Southampton, they would say, well, you're not a local charity. But I had to keep telling them that, well, actually, the Guernsey people who've used it, it's definitely a charity to them. And so it's
and Alderney and Sark and
anyone available for sure.
All the Channel Islands, and even the Falkland Islands, believe it or not.
I mean, we have a very close connection with Southampton for these exact kind of reasons. So any support over there benefits people over here massively.
But it took a while to get, and even now we get situations where I say, you don't qualify for a particular grant or whatever. And, you have to respect that view. And in some cases, it's actually, particularly with the corporates, there'll be some provision in their governing document that said it must be on the island.
Right, okay.
To be fair to them, they have
You
no
kind
choice.
of hands are tied.
They may help us in another way, but now that the place is actually open, and I refer to COVID because it should have opened 2 years earlier, basically.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, the building had to stop, and it didn't actually open until February of 2021. So it was almost 2 years late in the offing. And in that year alone, we had visits from Guernsey, people of 99, and Jersey was very similar, about 96. And last year, we were 226 visits from Guernsey, and again, Jersey was 210 or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, those are the way hospitals work is that the actual visit. So, for instance, in Ali's case, I don't know how many times you've been in and out of the place.
Yeah.
But they would all count as say,
a
10
single,
or 15
yeah.
visits.
Yeah.
Where no, it's not about individuals. It's about visits.
Yeah.
So the visits are the numbers that count, and I've discovered subsequently that all the hospitals produce their statistics accordingly, because it's a visit, which means that it has to be costed, and also all of that sort of stuff has to come into it. But it's nothing. Nobody sees any of that at all, and certainly not at Maggie's. As Ali knows, I'm forever asking them for the stats, because it's very important for us. It's very important for local consumption purposes to be able to tell people that those are the sort of numbers that we sadly, but at the same time they are using the facility, and they will spread the gospel as well, hopefully. So that's the whole idea and the whole structure, and it's just a wonderful charity to be associated with. And
well, unfortunately, cancer affects so many people. That's
pretty much one in two.
Did you know, so you said at the beginning that you weren't aware of it before your experiences, and so were you signposted there when you were in Southampton, or was
literally just by a nurse in the ward?
So it wasn't an official, was it kind of in
She
conversation?
She did mention Macmillan's as well, or Maggie's, but because I'd seen the brochure for Maggie, the leaflet for Maggie's the day before we left for Southampton, I thought, well, I'll go and try Maggie's, and I didn't look back really. I think it's important to emphasise as well, Peter, that we only raise, the Guernsey committee in Guernsey, we only raise money for the Southampton Maggie's.
Yeah,
We don't raise money for anything, because that's where we go.
We go,
Yeah, not every time, but most of the time, don't we?
Yeah. And I mean, we've raised about 86,000 in that whole. I mean, that's more latterly than at the beginning. There was a little bit at the beginning after we had a presentation and a delegation back in October 2018, I think it was the very first time, and there was a little bit of financing then, but nothing compared to where we are now, that has all been, as I said, down to the generosity of people, and people telling other people that this is somewhere they want to go, because there's no charge to the individuals that use it.
No.
So we have to raise those funds. And when I say our two functions, as far as I'm concerned, from the Guernsey charity, is awareness. That's the key one.
Yeah.
Is to make it aware. We've got two events coming up this weekend and the weekend after, the Donkey Derby and the KG5.
We'll be at the Donkey Derby. We've got somebody racing in it.
Yeah.
Millie, we've put her forward.
Well, we'll have a stand there basically.
Okay.
So to get the name, and so we've got a presence and we can get around and see things. The fundraising side of it is important, but I always say it's on a proportionate basis. We've got to realise, how big we are as an island and all the rest of it, and in essence, we're between 1% and 2% of the whole community. Well, but our fundraising has been way above that, basically, in terms of where. That's been thanks to some of the grants we've got, as well as all the other activities that take place. But each individual, we've got bake days, we have wine tastings, and raffles and stuff like that. Like every other one. But, it's pretty similar. But we're a small team of 6, just 7 now. I think we've got one additional.
Okay.
But we do we pull in family members as well, basically. So my granddaughters help out enormously.
And so it's important, Ali, I guess, you want people to know that the service is there.
Yes.
You want people to know that when they go over, Maggie's exists.
Yeah.
And I mean, what would you? Do you have anything you would want to say to somebody who perhaps is going through a similar situation or something adjacent? Why should they go along to Maggie's, and how will it help their family?
Because I was very lucky. I did have a lot of support in family and friends, fortunately. But the people at Maggie's really understand exactly what you're going through, because it can be really hard for the carer as well. I mean, they were incredibly sympathetic and empathetic to Mike, but they also knew how hard it was for me.
Yeah.
Because that became my life for a year. The whole year of my life was Mike and cancer, really.
Yeah.
Everything else, just, I gave up my job, my hobbies, everything, and just moved to England. And it was really nice to know they were on side.
Yeah. I guess they might get overseen a bit in the hospital.
Yes.
Because you are not the patient.
Yeah. Quite rightly so, but yeah.
Amazing. So if people, want to support, want to help fundraise, want to support the charity, the Guernsey arm, what can they do? Is anything coming up? Can they donate in any way they want?
Yes, they can. Yes, I mean, you'll see on the flyer that our bank details are there basically, and that's an easy online option. They can do other things as well. They can contribute things, which they do things either for prizes. Yeah. People will be very generous in that regard. Obviously, the donations, and also just helping. It's coming along, and sometimes, I mean, to be fair, as I said, we have a very busy committee, generally speaking, and we've just moved from 6 to 7. And we've also got, as I say, some family members as well on everybody's side. So we're usually able, because we did have a discussion about whether we could do two shows sort of on weeks running, because it's quite a big effort putting it all together and all the rest of it. But so I put it to the committee and said, look, you guys, do we want to take on this, or is it asking too much? And to a man and lady, they all wanted to go ahead and do it. So fine, that's what we'll do. And we have about 4 of those, I think now. It's the government house,
the big Christmas one,
the big Christmas one, the round table, and these 2. Yeah, and we did the Jubilee. Yeah. As well, which was extremely good. So that gets the name around as well as raising some funds as well.
I'm hoping with Jill that we're going to do the mutt strut as well. Yes. But that would probably be next year.
Okay.
A dog walk.
Well, keep us informed. Yeah. We'd love to run stuff on this. Yeah. This is an important thing.
So, and again, going back to your question to Ali in terms of because obviously this was a very difficult situation. It's only really applies to people who have to go off island for treatment.
Yeah.
Because the PEH can deal with certain types of cancer themselves, but there's about 400 types that I've learnt over the years of cancer, and some of them just simply can't be dealt with here in England, so they have to go off island, and then it becomes even more important for the support because of the travel arrangements and where they stay,
and you feel quite alone when you're away from home,
and so that's basically who
although they can join in. Saying that, there are, as I was saying, there's yoga classes and relaxation classes and Tai Chi classes. They do those on Zoom.
Yeah.
And also, I was offered, because I was seeing the counsellor when I was there, I had some sessions by Zoom when I got home.
Okay.
And, in fact, you know the person, I'll mention her to you afterwards. Somebody that's very close to me and my family at the moment is going through cancer. And she didn't have a treatment in Southampton. She had it in Guernsey, but she was offered the use of the psychologist in Southampton. So
they wouldn't turn anybody away.
They will offer people remotely.
Yeah. So you don't have to just be there.
No.
Well, the service is just to help, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's not precious about whether you're there or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for listening to The Interview, a Bailiwick Express podcast. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe. You can find us on all social media channels, and if you'd like to keep up to date on all the work the Express team does, please sign up to our daily email by visiting gsy.bailiwickexpress.com.